Hollywood's golden age was a world of silver screens and golden illusions, where perfection was sculpted from light and every smile was rehearsed under the shadow of expectation. These were the stars who defined an era, breathtakingly beautiful, effortlessly charismatic, worshipped by millions. But what if behind that immaculate charm, there were minds struggling to keep up with the scripts, the fame, and sometimes even with reality itself? In the studios of the 1930s through the 1950s, intelligence wasn't just prized, it was managed. Studio heads secretly conducted psychological assessments of their biggest stars. Some results were quietly buried, others rewritten, and a few became whispered legends in Hollywood's darker corners. Because not all stars were made equal. Some had talent that glowed brighter than genius ever could. Today, we look behind the curtain at 9 Golden Age icons whose reported IQs stunned those who worked closest to them, yet who still conquered the screen in ways intellect alone never could. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. 1. Marilyn Monroe, the mind behind the myth. She was Hollywood's eternal goddess, soft-spoken, wide-eyed, and impossibly magnetic. Marilyn Monroe was the fantasy. But behind that breathy innocence, insiders whispered something else. Marilyn struggled to read long dialogue, memorize complex lines, or even interpret subtext in her roles. Reports suggested an IQ in the low 80s, a number that shocked directors who saw her beauty as near mystical perfection. She often misunderstood direction, needed multiple takes, and occasionally lost focus mid-scene. But Marilyn's genius, yes, genius, wasn't intellectual. It was instinctual. She could channel vulnerability in a way no one else could. Her sadness, her confusion, her longing, all real, all visible. She didn't act emotion, she radiated it. While critics mocked her for playing dumb, Marilyn quietly studied acting under Lee Strasberg, desperate to prove that her worth was more than curves and blonde curls. The tragedy is that Hollywood never wanted her mind, only her magic. 2. Jane Mansfield, the manufactured genius. Jane Mansfield wanted to be seen as more than a bombshell, so she claimed she had an IQ of 163, higher than Einstein's. But those who knew her laughed at the claim. Studio documents hinted her real score hovered around 84. Her supposed brilliance became a running joke, even among directors. She often forgot cues, misread lines, or lost focus entirely during long shoots. Yet, she turned those limitations into a weapon. Jane leaned into the dumb blonde stereotype until it became performance art. Her exaggerated giggles, her over-the-top poses, her self-parody, all deliberate. She made the world fall in love with her for underestimating her. Behind the glitter, Jane's story was tragic. She wanted to prove her mind mattered. Enrolling in UCLA courses, reading philosophy aloud in interviews, but Hollywood had already decided who she was. When she died at 34, her low IQ was no longer gossip. It was a ghostly metaphor for an industry that punished women for wanting to be seen as whole. 3. Tony Curtis, the handsome illusion. He was the face of suave, dark hair, smoldering eyes, and that Brooklyn accent that melted into movie perfection. But Tony Curtis' IQ reportedly fell in the low average range, around 85, and he struggled in reading comprehension throughout his career. Directors loved his looks, but lamented his lack of depth. Lines had to be simplified. Emotions had to be coached. Tony often admitted he learned by mimicry, not understanding why a scene worked, only that it did. Yet, Tony Curtis was a survivor. He grew up in poverty, fought through insecurity, and built a persona out of confidence he didn't fully feel. When critics said he lacked substance, he smiled because they were still watching. He proved that charisma could rewrite the laws of success, and sometimes the illusion is all Hollywood ever asked for. 4. Mamie Van Doran, the imitation star. Mamie Van Doran was Hollywood's third blonde bombshell, following Monroe and Mansfield. She had the looks, the body, and the studio's expectations, but not the intellectual stamina they demanded behind the camera. Her reported IQ? 81. Directors said she struggled to process complex direction, often misinterpreting emotional cues. But unlike Monroe, Mamie leaned into sensual physicality as her strength. She didn't chase critical approval, she knew her role, and she owned it. What made Mamie unforgettable wasn't her intellect, but her defiance. She joked openly about her limitations. "I wasn't born to read Shakespeare. I was born to make men forget about it." That line alone captured the paradox of Hollywood, where emotional instinct could outshine intellect every single time. 5. Tab Hunter, the beautiful puppet. Tab Hunter was the all-American dreamboat, tanned, athletic, and disarmingly innocent. But off-screen, studio trainers often had to reteach him basic acting technique for each role. With an IQ said to be below 90, Tab found complex roles confusing. Directors described him as sweet but blank, yet utterly photogenic, a human sculpture. In private, Tab was shy, closeted, and painfully insecure. He confessed later in life that he didn't understand what Hollywood wanted. What it wanted was his face, not his thoughts. His story became a quiet tragedy of beauty and obedience, a reminder that stardom sometimes demands surrender, not self-expression. 6. Dorothy Lamore, the Queen of Simplicity. Dorothy Lamore's tropical allure in the 1940s made her a studio goldmine. Draped in sarongs and surrounded by adventure, she was the escapist fantasy of wartime America. But behind the glamour, producers whispered about her childlike comprehension. With a reported IQ near 83, Dorothy wasn't adept at abstract interpretation. Scripts had to be broken down line by line. Yet her simplicity worked. Audiences found her pure, wholesome, comforting. She projected warmth, something that no acting class could teach. Dorothy herself once said, "I never understood all that method stuff. I just smiled and meant it." That's the magic. She may not have been intellectual, but she was sincere. And sincerity, in a world built on illusion, is its own kind of brilliance. 7. Johnny Weissmuller, the wild intellect. Johnny Weissmuller didn't have to act like Tarzan, he was Tarzan. A swimming champion turned actor, Weissmuller had limited literacy and a reported IQ of 79, putting him below average. Lines had to be minimized, direction simplified, and complex choreography rehearsed endlessly. But none of it mattered once the camera rolled. Johnny's physicality was storytelling in motion, raw, instinctive, animalistic. His famous yell wasn't scripted, it came from him. Primitive, unfiltered, perfect. Hollywood might have mocked his simplicity, but audiences adored him. In a way, his untrained nature was his art. He didn't play Tarzan, he embodied humanity stripped to its most honest core. 8. Esther Williams' beauty in motion. Esther Williams wasn't an actress first. She was a swimmer, a national champion turned star. MGM transformed her into the mermaid of the screen, but off-set, the water was her safety net. Her IQ reportedly measured in the mid-80s, and directors often adjusted scripts to match her limited range. But what she lacked in interpretation, she compensated for with unmatched grace. Esther's underwater ballets were mesmerizing, choreographed art forms that didn't need dialogue. She found freedom in silence. The studio may have viewed her as limited, but audiences saw something transcendent, movement that expressed what words never could. 9. Buster Krab, the silent strength. Buster Krab, another Olympic athlete turned actor, was Hollywood's archetype of heroic masculinity. He played Tarzan, Flash Gordon, and Buck Rogers, the adventure icons of a generation. But, like Weissmuller, Buster's intelligence was often questioned. His IQ was reportedly 78, and he struggled to retain long scripts or understand symbolic dialogue. Yet, on screen, he was the fantasy, unbreakable, confident, unstoppable. Buster's success proved a deeper truth. Intellect can't measure instinct. His timing, his physical precision, his bravery, all forms of intelligence that defied the test scores. He didn't overthink. He performed. After exploring these 9 stories, one question lingers. What is intelligence? Hollywood in the Golden Age often equated intellect with sophistication. But these stars remind us that intelligence is not singular. It's not trapped in a number. There's intellectual intelligence, yes, but also emotional, creative, and physical intelligence. Marilyn's empathy was her intellect, Jane's satire was hers, Johnny's instinct, Esther's grace, Buster's timing, all unique expressions of mind through movement. The studios may have tested for IQ, but the camera measured something else: presence, magnetism, soul. And that's the form of intelligence audiences remember. But here's the darker side. Many of these actors weren't just celebrated, they were used. Studios recognized their mental simplicity and manipulated it. They controlled contracts, altered lines, dictated appearances, and sometimes even rewrote their public personas to make them seem smarter or dumber as needed. It raises uncomfortable questions. Were these individuals victims of exploitation, or were they given chances they otherwise wouldn't have had? The truth likely lies in between. Hollywood has always balanced exploitation and opportunity on a razor's edge. These stars were molded, not nurtured, sculpted into icons but denied intellectual agency. Their limited understanding made them malleable. Their beauty made them valuable. Their humanity made them unforgettable. Perhaps the most haunting truth is this: brilliance doesn't always come from intellect. Sometimes it comes from vulnerability, emotion, or pure authenticity. When we watch Marilyn's heartbreak, Tony's charm, or Esther's grace, we're not witnessing stupidity, we're witnessing honesty. People who lived without filters, who felt before they thought, who acted from instinct rather than calculation. Maybe that's what made the golden age of Hollywood so unforgettable. Not perfect minds, but imperfect souls, captured forever in black and white. So, the next time you see one of those luminous faces flicker across the screen, remember, the camera didn't measure IQ. IT captured something infinitely rarer: human truth.